Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and thanks for stopping by. Just to remind you that I'm going to London this weekend, looking forward to it tremendously. Of course, I've spent more than half of my life there, and I'm participating in the Homecoming Revolution event on the 15th and the 16th of March at Olympia. And I'm really looking forward to that, connecting to people who've come back, finding out about their experiences and sharing mine. And it's actually a deluge of folks who are coming back home, I must say. Home thoughts. I like this photograph taken by the AMREF flying doctors on our way to Tanzania. A nice view of Mount Kilimanjaro, and indeed it is. And this picture of Nairobi, which Lord Mwesh on Twitter says, "Believe it or not," and indeed I do. And finally, yesterday evening, as I was waiting for my friend Alex at the Muthaiga mini market, I took a photograph of the moon, which I'll share with you as well. Political reflections. This is a photograph of a working meeting with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. This is Vladimir Putin's Twitter feed, He's very interesting in terms of how he responds. His response, because basically it's an information war between Russia and the US right now. The Obama administration on Tuesday said US military drills in Eastern Europe speak in a clear voice to Russia. And US Navy destroyer plans to take part in military exercises with Romanian and Bulgarian warships in the Black Sea, just across the water from the Crimean Peninsula. In Poland, US fighter jets plan to participate in joint exercises. My conclusions are that Crimea is a fait accompli. And on that note, I jump to Mikhail Lermontov, who wrote, "Anyone who has chanced," and I think this is about Crimea, "like me to roam through desolate mountains and studied at length their fantastic shapes and drunk the invigorating air of their valleys, can understand why I wish to describe and depict these magic scenes for others." The flick of the tail is a headline on Asia Times. Well, that didn't take long. While the risk of all-out war is still no more than modest, it has definitely emerged as a lot more than a tale of less than 1%. Fair point. This photo was taken from the International Space Station, showing the smoke plume drifting out from the World Trade Center in New York on the 11th of September 2001. Which then took me back to Gerhard Richter and his 15 paintings based on photographs of moments in the lives and deaths of 4 members of the Red Army faction, the German left-wing terrorist group that perpetrated a number of kidnappings and killings throughout the 1970s. Like on Kawara's date paintings, these paintings have a single date as their title. On this date, the bodies of 3 principal RAF members were found in the cells of the German prison where they were incarcerated. Richter based his paintings on newspaper and police photographs. His reworking of these documentary sources is dark, blurred, and diffuse. Richter hopes that by way of reporting, these paintings will contribute to an appreciation of our time, to see it as it is. I'll put up 2 examples of those Baader-Meinhof works. And that took me back then to Don DeLillo's Mao, where he says, "Stories have no point if they don't absorb our terror." Wired is asking how it's possible to lose an airplane in 2014. The most chilling thing about this is the fact that the plane has seemingly vanished without a trace. The captain, who had more than 18,000 hours of flight time, gave no warning, issued no mayday. There was no indication anything was amiss. This is not terribly unusual because a flight crew's first priority in an emergency is dealing with the situation at hand. Aviate, navigate, then communicate is the mantra. Airline pilot and blogger Patrick Smith says the radio silence doesn't startle me. All right, good night were the last heard words from MH370. I'll put up a photograph of it. And via Drudge Report, it seems Boeing had been warning of a computer takeover of the 777. This is from federalregister.gov articles. Have a look at it. It's on Rich Wrap-Ups. The integrated network configurations in the Boeing Model 777-200, 300, and 300ER series planes may enable increased connectivity with external network sources and will have more interconnected networks and systems such as passenger entertainment and information services than previous airplane models. This may enable the exploitation of network security vulnerabilities and increased risks, potentially resulting in unsafe conditions for the airplanes and occupants. This potential exploitation of security vulnerabilities may result in intentional or unintentional destruction, disruption, degradation, or exploitation of data and systems critical to the safety and maintenance of the airplane. The existing regulations and guidance material did not anticipate these types of system architectures. Further, 14 CFR regulations and current system safety assessment policy and techniques do not address potential security vulnerabilities which could be exploited by unauthorized access to airplane networks and servers. And it's well worth having a read of that article, actually. On that note, I'll put up that photograph of, I don't know what it was, but it suddenly flew in a straight line up into the sky and then plateaued up, and I took a photograph of it 13 days ago, and it's still a mystery to me what it was. The great thing about the modern world is that average people have more power than ever before, Clinton said, referring to the ability to mobilize people through technology and social media. If lots of people band together, they have staggering power indeed. Since the interim deal was signed with Iran, purchases of Iranian oil by its top four buyers, China, India, Japan, and South Korea, have been creeping up, and together they have taken 1.25 million barrels per day in January, against a daily average of 935,900 barrels per day for all of 2013. And India have been requested to reduce their uplift because of the fact that they want to, the US wants to keep at the limit. Saudi Arabia threatens to blockade Qatar over terrorism by air, land, and sea unless Doha cuts ties with Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, closes global channel Al Jazeera, expels local branches of the US Brookings Institution and Rand Corporation think tanks. The threat was issued by Riyadh before it withdrew its ambassador to Doha and branded as terrorist organizations the Brotherhood, Hezbollah, and the Al-Qaeda-linked Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and Jabhat al-Nusra. King Abdullah has decreed that any Saudi who fights abroad could be jailed for 20 to 30 years, and those who join, endorse, or provide moral or material support to groups classified as terrorist or extremist will risk prison sentences of 5 to 30 years. An informed source speculated the decree sends a message to Saudis: don't come home, fight unto death or victory. And Saudi Arabia has, of course, reshuffled the deck. They've given the Syrian file to the Interior Minister, Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, replacing the intelligence chief, quite mercurial, Prince Bandar bin Sultan. On the third anniversary of the Fukushima disaster, a woman prays for those who died in the earthquake and tsunami. Quite a powerful photograph. Currency markets: euro 138.54, touched 139.15 on March 7, which was the highest since October 2011. Dollar index 79.82, the yen 102.98, Swissy 0.8780, pound a little bit softer 166.28, Aussie 0.8963, and that's fallen 1.5% since March 6. Consumer Sentiment Index for Australia fell 0.7% to 99.5 in March, which was the lowest since May. India rupee 61.045, South Korean won 1069.45, the Rial 236.24 is a little bit softer. Egyptian pound 695.97, the Rand softer still at 1086.81, and we're still in that range, which goes up to 1150 and down to 1060. The yen has climbed 1.9% this year. I'm quite constructive about the yen from a trading point of view. The dollar has fallen 0.6% and the euro is up 0.3%. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, last at 79.82. Euro dollar 138.54. I remain bullish, and I think Draghi is setting the tone for a stronger European economy. Dollar yen 102.98. From a trading point of view, I prefer being long above 103. Interesting information. Misery index, which adds the jobless rate to the level of inflation, will climb 7 percentage points in the 3 months starting April 1st, when Japan raises its sales levy to 8% from 5%. This would be the highest level for the measure since June 1981, when Japan was emerging out of depression after the oil shocks in the 70s. Toyota Motor Corp is forecasting a record 1.9 trillion yen profit this fiscal year and has agreed to increase base wages in Japan for the first time since 2008. Toyota will also pay an average bonus of 2.44 million yen, the equivalent of 6.8 months of salary, and the most in 6 years. Gold, stronger still, and the highest level since October the 30th. I'll put up a 3-month chart. Obviously, Ukraine and geopolitical pressures building. Interestingly, crude oil lost its level above 100, last trading at 99.47, and I've been telling you for a while that above 100 has been simply nosebleed territory. Russia's RTS stock index has declined 21.4% this year, the most in the world. The ruble has weakened 9.7%, second worst performance among 24 emerging market currencies tracked by Bloomberg. I think Russia is a buy. Coming to sub-Saharan Africa, militant Islamist website calls for attacks on France and Hollande. Has created a series of posters calling for attacks on France and for the assassination of President Francois Hollande in reprisal for the country's policies in Mali and the CAR, the CITI monitoring service said late on Monday. In addition to assisting Mali in its war against Islamists, France sent troops 4 months ago to the majority Christian Central African Republic, where predominantly Muslim Seleka rebels seized power a year ago. The Seleka has since been pushed back by Christian anti-Balaka, anti-Machete, in the local language militia. The Al-Minbar Jihadi Media Network, a well-known Islamist website, created 6 posters as part of a campaign it dubbed "We Will Not Be Silent, O France." The forum's media soldiers for the support of Islam designed the posters, which can be downloaded and printed by visitors to the site. To our lone wolves in France, assassinate the president of disbelief and criminality, terrify his cursed government, and bomb them and scare them as a support for the vulnerable in the CAR, one of the posters said. We'll have to watch that then. Desperate dictator China refuses Robert Mugabe's request for Zimbabwe bailout. Last November, China pledged to give Africa some $1 trillion in aid over the next 12 years. At the time, a clearly bedazzled Mugabe regime, just re-elected in late July, told itself, its creditors, and its citizens that Zimbabwe would reap a windfall of some $30 billion in Chinese loans and grants, and sent a series of delegations to Beijing for that purpose. Zimbabwe and President Mugabe need the money. The country is isolated, financially tattered, in increasingly desperate economically, its financial obligations are $11 billion in arrears, and with its oncoming ideological standoff against the West, the nation is unable to borrow from the IMF, the World Bank, and the UN. 85% of the population unemployed, estimated 20 to 25% of Zimbabweans live outside Zimbabwe. It appeared that China would step in, solve the autocrat's problems, validate his so-called Look East policy, and gain a stronger foothold in southern Africa. The bailout would help stabilize the government and pacify a growing trend of middle and working class anger at the poor economy and corruption. The aid was being called a friendly boost. Yet in what appears to be an embarrassing slap, China's much-touted bailout, or at least Mugabe's betrayal of it, now appears to have fallen through. Mugabe's spokesmen have steadily downgraded the size of China's support from $30 billion to $10 billion to $3 billion, and then in February to $400 million. Now it appears China won't play Santa Claus at all. In what may be a harbinger of a tougher approach, last week apparently ruled out any direct aid. We don't normally provide budgetary support to other countries, but we try to help Zimbabwe in our own way, the Chinese ambassador to Zimbabwe told reporters. Chinese officials, the business community in Shanghai, told the most recent Zimbabwe delegation headed by Finance Minister Patrick Chinamasa that he needed to offer bankable projects instead of promises like the one he tried to sell Beijing to get cash. Chinamasa had sought funding for the giant Zimbabwe Agenda for Sustainable Socio-Economic Transformation, ZIM Asset, a $27 billion plan to bring economic revival. Zimbabwe's entire annual budget is $4.5 billion, to give a sense of how large the request was. Chinamasa's delegation tried to secure loans using the nation's mineral reserves as security, but the Chinese demanded an accounting of when Mugabe's projects would break even and how a payment plan would work, which Chinamasa did not appear to have ready. Mugabe cannot economically hold fort from now till 2018 without a huge financial boost, so we're likely to see more trips to China. Trips have mostly been fruitless when they concern huge financial aid, yet we keep trying. We're now like gamblers who keep putting money and efforts toward trying to land the jackpot, only to see yet another heavy loss. Unfortunately, no one else can bail us out, so it is a vicious cycle of hopes and heartbreaks. The African Development Bank estimates Zimbabwe needs $14 billion to pay back lenders and be eligible for aid that stopped in 1999 because of arrears. If the Chinese aren't going to bail President Mugabe out, it's going to be a very big problem. The company wants to continue annual growth rate of 30% in Africa. This is GE, but I like this comment. The world is complicated, Mr. Immelt wrote, but through the fog of the last 5 years, I would take the 2014 economy any day. The South African All Shares back at a record, up 3.45% this year. Dollar versus Rand beginning to soften, 1086.99 you can see, but 1140 is the key level, couldn't break through 1060. Egyptian pound, I'll put up a 3-month chart, that's extremely steady. The Egyptian stock market up 19.63%, back over 8,000 in Africa's best. The Nigerian All Shares down 4.67% in 2014. I'm bearish about that. Ghana Stock Exchange up 12.64% in 2014. Boosting Ethiopia's economic growth with the building boom above Addis Abeba's concrete skyline, cranes tower high amid blasts from nearby drills and diggers. At the feet of buildings shrouded in bamboo scaffolding, excavators dig up dirt tracks to be replaced by paved roads and a modern railway. It's a scene common to most neighborhoods in the Ethiopian capital, which has turned into a giant building zone and a city in transformation. It looks like a construction site when we compare from the previous time. The basic engine blocks of economic transformation are the infrastructure. The Achilles heel of Africa is power, lack of roadworks, lack of the basic needs that you need to transform your economy. Reykjavik Geothermal, which is an Icelandic power plant builder, plans to begin drilling in Ethiopia by July as part of a $2 billion project to develop the renewable energy source, COO Gunnar Orn Gunnarsson said. We met him at the IMF conference, very interesting fellow. And somebody else saying all the industries here are screaming for power. I said it's dragging their development of everything to have no power. Ethiopia is, of course, in a transformative power moment. Don't forget the 8,000 megawatt grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile River, about which the Egyptians are not too happy. India Inc. Looks to Japanese funding for expansion in Africa. I thought this was interesting. Describing Japan as one of the largest sources of patient funding in the world, Tata, who is chairman of the Africa desk in the Confederation of Indian Industry, told reporters on the sidelines of the 10th India-Africa Business Conclave, perhaps the one area where Indian industry needs a little more assistance is in areas like infrastructure and construction, where we need long-term patient funding for the projects that we wish to participate in Africa. And obviously, India is not the cheapest source of funds in the world. Tata said we need to find sources of third country funding and find a mechanism of making that third country funding available to Indian companies to enable them to offer packages to Africa, he said. India can aspire to quadruple its revenues from Africa to $160 billion by 2025 by focusing its presence in sectors such as IT services, agriculture, infrastructure, pharmaceuticals, and consumer goods. Banik Mitra partner McKinsey said African governments have taken several steps to improve overall stability and security. Comparing the period between 1995 and 2005 and 2006 to 2013, inflation dropped from 23% to 8%, government debt dropped from 105% to 52%, exchange rate volatility dropped from 29% to 12%. Serious conflicts have fallen from 4.8 per annum to 2.6 per annum in the 2000s. That's interesting data. China has set up a chamber of commerce in Angola, and in that article I learned that 500 Chinese enterprises operating in Angola and more than 100,000 Chinese expatriates working in the post-war reconstruction process. The US is condemning heavy-handed tactics by Burundi police in clashes. They were breaking up opposition party meetings at the weekend in which more than a dozen people were injured and several were arrested. A Sudanese student died on Tuesday after police fired tear gas at Khartoum University's protesters who had links to the Darfur region. Coming to Kenya, the Public Procurement Administrative Review Board, PPARB, revoked the award of the 24.5 billion shilling laptop purchase tender to Olive and directed the tender committee to complete the procurement process with only Hewlett-Packard or Haier Group in contention. The review team, whose powers are quasi-judicial, found that Olive was not an original equipment manufacturer, a requirement for the award of the contract, and did not meet the requirement that the bidders be companies with a turnover of 8 billion shillings. I wrote about this on the 18th of February when I said if I might make two further observations. Last week, this was in February, I was speaking about execution is everything. And therefore I was saying I, for one, would be keener on having a stronger partner than Olive implementing my overarching campaign promise than appears to be the case. I'm glad to see that that's been reversed. Hardline Kenya cleric, the face of homegrown radical Islam. This is an article about this mullah. When Islamist gunmen stormed Westgate Mall on a busy Saturday in September, the ensuing carnage also intensified fears that Kenya's homegrown Islamists were on the rise. Although the attackers were from Somalia's Al-Qaeda-inspired Al-Shabaab rebels, the group's ability to infiltrate and operate in Kenya, as well as to find a stream of willing recruits, has focused attention on radical Islamists based down the coast in the Kenyan port city of Mombasa. At the heart of the steamy port hub sits the Musa Mosque, seen by Kenyan authorities as the epicenter of the new terrorist threat. Its key figure, Abu Bakr Sharif Ahmed, better known as Makaburi, does little to hide his firebrand leanings. It's our innocence for your innocence. It was justified as per the Quran, as per the religion of Islam. Westgate was 100% justified. Are the ones being killed and raped in Somalia not innocent? Makaburi said in an interview with AFP. The Kenyan army is doing the same thing and worse in Somalia than what happened at Westgate, which was one of the points I made to a friend. I said, if this was what can happen, all that looting and others, then imagine what's happening there. So as per the Islamic religion, they had every right to avenge whatever the KDF was doing in Somalia. Makaburi asserted that no real Muslims died in the upmarket part Israeli owned mall. How come a Muslim is at a shopping mall instead of being at a mosque, he said. The Americans and Western governments are killing innocent people all over the world every day. They're bombing weddings, funerals. The real terrorists, Makaburi argued, were the military personnel operating drones. How come the pilots of drones are not labelled as terrorists? How come when we Muslims are being killed by the Americans using drones, by the British, by whoever, by the West, it's nothing? But when you have a single non-Muslim killed by a Muslim, it's terrorism, he said. In August 2012, the Musa Mosque radical preacher Abu Drogo Muhammad was gunned down right very near where we used to live, about 3-4 kilometers. And in October last year, successor Sheikh Ibrahim Ismail met the same fate on a road near Mombasa, again sparking riots. Most believe the Kenyan authorities were behind the killings. Last month, the mosque was yet again the scene of violence when armed police launched a massive raid to put an end to what officials said was a jihadist convention and an al-Shabaab recruitment exercise taking place inside. Makaburu is in his 50s, is currently subject to UN sanctions, a travel ban, assets freeze and targeted arms embargo for being a leading facilitator and recruiter of young Kenyan Muslims for violent militant activity in Somalia and for having strong ties with senior al-Shabaab members. I do not support al-Shabaab. I do not know al-Shabaab. I support the implementation of Sharia law anywhere in the world. These are just accusations. Where is the proof that I've recruited anybody? Who have I recruited? When? How? Where? These are just accusations. He said the highest motivator for the youth to go into Somalia to fight jihad is the Kenyan government doing injustice to the Muslim youth here in Kenya. How do you think the youth feel after they were sitting peacefully in a mosque and they were invaded, shot at, killed, meant to disappear? Makaburi presents himself as a simple man promoting true Islam and not the kind practiced in Saudi Arabia, which he dismisses as a Christian country ruled by somebody who pretends to be a Muslim. In his view, the best examples of Islam are found in parts of Fallujah in Iraq, Afghanistan and Somalia. He said, my life is in danger, they will eventually kill me. They do that. I'll put up a photograph of Westgate 169 days ago. Just alert you to the fact that the Nairobi All Shares plus 3.97% in 2014, the NSE 20 is down 0.2% so far this year. If you want to follow the stock market, just register on rich.co.ke, get a password, and go to Rich Line. You can follow the market in real time as it trades. Once again, thanks a lot.